Welcome to round 5 of the Parenting Roundabout podcast for the week of June 3rd. I'm Terri Morrow, and I'm here with Nicole Eridix.
Hello.
And Catherine Haleko.
Hi.
Today we're taking a break from talking and complaining, obsessing, and instead shouting out things other people are doing that we think you'll find as useful or enjoyable as we do. We call this our Roundabout Roundup. And I will kick it off. Last week I talked about a YouTube series that I liked, and this week I'm going to talk about a YouTube series that I like. This is something that came to me by way of an email from the Cerebral Palsy Foundation about this new series they're doing called Universal Homes. I think that's the title of it. And what they are is they're little, maybe like 15-minute videos, very, very similar to something you would see on HGTV about home design and home makeovers and that sort of thing. But in this case, what they're doing is making the homes accessible to wheelchair users. And so, and it's just as glossy and beautiful and envy-provoking as any of those HGTV shows. Everything is gorgeous, and it's really interesting to see the way they accommodate things that you would never think of, like it's useful to have space under a bathroom sink for somebody who's having to use it sitting down, or things that you would need in the kitchen to make things accessible, just arrangements of things, slightly wider walkways. There was this one house where they wanted to put on a second story, but they didn't want to have an elevator. So they designed this very elaborate system of ramps going up around the outside that looks really pretty and also is very useful. And so it's interesting from a accommodation point of view. And it's also just gives you that same hit of, beautiful.
Right.
That you get from the best home design shows. And they're short. So if you have you want to have that sort of thing, but you only have about 12 minutes, go catch one of these things on YouTube. We'll have the link for it in the show notes. Catherine, you have another podcast? I have so many podcasts. Please don't get me interested in another podcast. Some people are into Inbox Zero. I'm trying to get to Podcast Q0, and it so rarely happens.
Yeah, that's not going to happen. Well, this is one of those ones that I don't subscribe to, but I just dip in now and then. And it's called Right About Now with Jonathan Small, and write as in Write. So he is a writer, and he interviews other writers. And so I just, listen whenever I see a person or a topic that I'm interested in. And for some reason, I clicked on one that was titled Caroline Van Hemert's Epic 4,000-Mile Trek into the Alaskan Wilds.
Whoa.
So this is a woman who is I believe a biologist. She's a scientist of some kind, an academic. And she and her husband, I think it was after they finished grad school, or there was some sort of point in their life where this became their project. So together they went all the way across Alaska, from the southern tip, where they have all the islands and stuff, that little piece that sticks down into Canada, and then they went all the way up to the Arctic Circle, all without any power, all just walking, skiing, rowing a boat in various parts of it. And it was just fascinating, her whole story. And then she wrote a book about it, afterwards, and that was the tie to this podcast. And it was just fascinating, just hearing the stories of some of the highs and the lows of this journey that they had together. And, the time when they were pretty sure they were going to get eaten by a bear, and the time when, the mosquito bites, the mosquitoes were so awful that they couldn't function, and, they had to wear full body suits to keep them, they had to have mosquito nets over their faces at all times. And a time when they ran out of food, just all this, it was really interesting. Yeah. And one of those things where you're better you than me, sister. There is no way. But she just was she had a great way of describing things, and just a good writer and a good guest on this particular podcast. And then I happened to see her have an article in the New York Times travel section about going on a big long boat trip with her husband and their 2 little boys. So she's one of those people.
Wow.
not like me.
Like to listen to them talk so that I don't have to do it myself.
Exactly. So, so yeah, it's called Right About Now with Jonathan Small, and I'll have the link in the show notes.
Cool. All right, Nicole, what do you got this week?
Well, I stumbled upon another podcast that I am binging on. And true to form, because, I like certain types of genres and podcasts. And they usually involve like murder mysteries.
Yep.
So this is a new one, and it's by the company behind Dirty John. I don't know if you heard of that.
I've heard of it.
Yeah.
Didn't listen to it.
Yeah. So that was a good one. I listened to that one. So this one is called The Shrink Next Door. And I'm just on the first episode, but I really, the storytelling is great. And, it's a New York Times, a veteran journalist who used to work for the New York Times. He's the one telling the story because it happened to him. And it talks about a very mysterious neighbor that he had, and kind of the story behind, how he thought he knew his neighbor in the house next door, but he didn't really.
He was wrong.
This person is, what the podcast promises to be is that they're going to kind of unravel this person's life. And because I guess he was quite a prominent psychiatrist in New York, but he really wasn't who he seemed to be. So yeah, it's really engaging. I'm only on my first podcast, but I'm enjoying it quite a bit.
Cool.
So
I feel like this Jonathan Small had an episode with the guy who wrote the original article that became Dirty John.
Really?
I could be wrong, but and I can't get the thing to load right now. But or was Dirty John the one where the guy was like the roommate from hell? Like he kept moving in with people, and no, that's not it.
Oh wait, well he scammed a lady in Newport Beach. Like he'd scam women, and tell them that he was in the army and was a doctor. And
I feel I'll see if I can find it, and we can talk about it. But
well, thank you. That's a podcast I'm not interested in listening to, so that's not going to strain my podcast view. The writer one, maybe.
I know, but you know what? There are so many listeners out there like me.
Yes, there are. And it's nice that there are so many different types of podcasts.
That's right.
That you can always find 2 or 4, or 10 or 12 or 30 to put on your queue and listen to.
Exactly. I listen to them while I do laundry.
Yes. We hope ours is yours, dear listener.
That's right.
And that's it for another week of Parenting Roundabout. If you missed any of our earlier episodes this week, look them up on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts to hear what we have to say about air travel, emergency contacts, tattling on other kids, and what we're watching on TV. You can also find all our episodes at parentingroundabout.com and talk back in the comments there on our Facebook page or on Twitter, where you'll find us at Roundabout Chat. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you back here on Monday.